Welcome to the Media Cat Magazine podcast. Thank you for tuning in for the next in our series, Rebel with a Cause, with me, Opal Turner. For this series, we're talking about the relationship between creativity and strategy, or in my other words, art, science and logic. It's my pet theory that strategy and planning can be a creative secret weapon and vice versa, and that we overly separate the disciplines in our industry. Today, we have not one, but two lovely guests with us. Sally and Jen are co-founders of Craft Media, and Craft sits between creative and media agencies to get brands noticed, and I'm thrilled to have them both today. Thank you both for joining us.
It's our pleasure, Opal.
Thanks for having us.
Absolute joy. Thank you so much. Shall we dive right in? Because I would love to just start by learning a bit more about you both and kind of your journeys to the point where you started Craft.
Okay, so I'll kick off. I started in the industry in 1989, probably before you even went to uni, I imagine, April, right? And at the time, I joined the media department at JWT, J. Walter Thompson, and so media and creative were very much part of the same team. So all of my career, I've been all about bringing those two, making sure those two disciplines work in harmony together. But I've worked all over the place, different creative agencies as their in-house comms planner. So WCRS was my other big agency. And then more recently, I suppose, I was MD at Initiative. So sort of working my way up through media agencies. And I was always a very big conscientious objector to that division of creative and media, to the point where I actually left the industry for a year because I was just like, this is going to be a disaster. We might, let's all give up and go home. Big proponent of the brilliance that happens, the magic that happens when you bring those two disciplines together, just to sort of chew the fat and noodle your way around a problem. And I suppose the sort of the impetus for Craft was seeing a gradual separation of the two disciplines. Media was increasingly becoming efficient. There was an increasing number of media plans that were kind of landing, or campaigns landing in the world without the media buyers ever having seen the creative work. On the other side as well, I think we were seeing a lot of creative agencies that were jumping to an ad campaign as the answer, rather than actually having the fun of going toe to toe with a great comms strategist to just try and work out, is there another way? And that, it was all becoming a bit bland and a bit obvious. And I know Jen felt exactly the same. There was a meeting of minds in Finsbury Square.
So my background sort of a bit more classical in media. Though I worked my way up through the big network agencies. So from WPP, started at Mindshare, planning and buying B2B campaigns. Quickly realised I was not a buyer, so moved out of that. Then I went to PhD. I was there for 10 years. And sort of, honestly, we talk about comm strategy. It's not like we made it up. Like it has existed. It was there. It's just that it's like everybody forgot how to do it. So PhD at the time was really where I sort of lent into that opportunity and sort of joined up creative work. So I worked on Cadbury, missed Gorilla, but did do eyebrows, and did some. I worked on Adidas. Worked on really great creative campaigns that lent into the combination of media and creativity, and then went to Maxis, where I ended up as being global, what was my job title? Global Creative Director, which pissed a lot of people off, to be perfectly honest, that somebody in a media agency was being called that. But the point was exactly this, is that my job was to try and pull the creativity out of people from the media perspective, so that they weren't just distributing an idea, but they sort of understood what the idea was and how media can help blow it out, make it more playful, sort of play what if with a good creative team, because you understand we just got different toys that you can sort of start to play with.
Absolutely. And it does, when it's done right, it does such an incredible job of enhancing any idea. Totally with you on that. And so when your minds did meet, what were your kind of goals, your sort of philosophy? Obviously there's craft is a very, meaningful word in and of itself. So I'm just intrigued what you were kind of thinking and what goals you were kind of setting yourself out with at that time. Obviously, one of them being making sure creativity was at the heart. But could you just go into a little bit more detail for me?
Yeah, so it was the back end of 2017 when we first started talking about, is there an opportunity to create a consultancy that sits in the middle between creative and media and brings back the art of comms planning. And it's, as Jen said, it's the bit of media planning or that everyone's forgotten how to do. They literally jump straight to the answer is a media plan. Now, how should I spend your budget very efficiently, as opposed to let's work around an idea and blow it out and make it famous. And I suppose it's important to say that there are pockets of brilliant comms strategy coming out of media agencies, but it's not consistent across every single client, right? If you're Tesco, you get the best comm strategy that money can buy coming out of MediaCom. It's literally excellent. If you are spending £100,000 for your entire marketing campaign, it's very likely that you won't see a comm strategist. You might at best get a media planner on your business. So there's good pockets of it, but we wanted to be consistent. We wanted to make sure that comms planning was being used to help drive a client's business as hard and as fast as it possibly could, regardless of spend, I suppose. So we wanted to sit as a neutral team. We wanted to make sure that we could tell a client to stop spending. We could tell them that the answer was to redo their website. We could suggest that they needed to put more into PR than that. We needed to take a neutral position. And I think we both feel like, because there are so many different things that the answer could be, you've really got to have someone sitting in a neutral position in order to take that point of view. And as much as we love them, the answer from a media agency is always going to be spend more on media. So yeah, that's.
And I suppose what we should say, Sally, is the thing that makes us different as a consultancy is that we don't buy media. So we are strategy and planning. So we do move into media planning, but we felt it was really important when we set up. Basically, we're not going to be rich, is what we've worked out, because all the money is in media buying, but we'll be happy. But so we are deliberately neutral. We are not rewarded for the investment of the media budget. It is a fee-based service that we offer, which gives us a degree of neutrality, which I think it was important for us, to state when we say other people buy media and why we're different. It's because it is we're additional. It should be all right to get us in on any project. If you we're not in competition with either creative agencies or media agencies. It's a different skill set that gets added on.
I can imagine that's quite freeing in a lot of senses, actually, just kind of mentally knowing that you don't have to hold yourself to that incentivization of buying more media after all of those years of doing it.
It is really freeing. I mean, we've grown much faster than we thought we ever would. So we're now 24 people. But we've realised that when we hire planners or strategists, we almost have to break them for 3 months. That probation period, and we were very honest about this to say it's going to be bloody awful. You're going to hate it. We're going to make you will question your life decisions because you've been sort of trained to deliver an answer in a certain way, and actually we want you to do the opposite. We want you to take a step back and think more generally about what's the challenge that we're trying to overcome with comms and what's its role. And that takes it's like breaking a horse, really. You've just got to. There's a lot of kickback, lots of tears for the first few months, and all of a sudden the light goes on, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is amazing."
We're also teaching people how to have a point of view on creative, like, because it's been so divorced, and we have not helped ourselves by every time we get in a room with the creative team sort of going, make it smaller, but make it fit on this size, like, or make it into 3 seconds. So I get why we're not always welcome in the room. Creative agencies equally can be a bit snotty about ideas coming from places that aren't there. So we collectively haven't helped ourselves, but we are teaching people, have a point of view, like engage. This is the thing that we're doing. So lean into it. Do you like the creative work? Do you think it works? How do you think it's exemplifying the strategy? Where do you think it is? So encouraging people to have a voice about it has been a huge part of what we do in terms of when people come in, because they've been told they're not allowed to have a point of view on it. And that is releasing those shackles and creating relationships with creative agencies where they allow us to do that and welcome it. Like they're like, what do you think? It is a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a complete mindset shift, really. I mean, I, even from my experience, I describe strategy and creativity as art, science and logic, and therefore many people feel you can't do both or have a mind that works both ways. And obviously you're, in a similar sense, trying to create that mindset of stepping back, looking at it slightly more objectively from a creative standpoint, having your own feelings and point of view about it. And in that, I'm really interested, because I also love the phrase, like, it's like breaking in a horse. Because that is how mindsets work, right? Like, they're so ingrained, we have to break them down and then build them back up again. Is there any specific ways that you find have been really helpful to help people get out of that mindset and into a slightly freer one?
It's an excellent question. I think a lot of it is by watching us do it. So, the fact that your bosses effectively are going toe to toe with Niels Leonard in a room over what the idea is, how we can pull it and stretch it. The more you see that in action, the easier it is to know that it's acceptable. And, there are ways of having those discussions that aren't combative, that are building. And he's a brilliant example. And we always say, if it doesn't work out for Niels creatively, he can be a comms planner, because he thinks he thinks in ideas. He thinks in his ideas have a cadence and a rhythm to them, which is exactly what we're trying to teach our team to think about. Is, how does this land in the world? What do you see when? What sort of energy should it have? What's its body language? And Niels gets that really well. I mean, we're quickly getting to understand the type of creative agencies that embrace us and want to work with us, and the type that want us to deliver a media plan. And they're the ones that we will sort of work less well with or not at all.
Outside of Sally and myself, the other thing that we're well integrated into the APG, which was a really important thing for me as I was coming up, and I was invited to sit on the APG Council a few years ago. It was brilliant. You get to meet loads of other people that in these little silos that we create, you don't necessarily get to mix with. So one thing, our strategy team in particular, they are attending the meetings, they're running courses, they're presenting all different types of agencies, creative, media, PR, etc. So we are leaning into that resource as a way of us having those conversations and building up that skill set and opening the door, to other people as well to ask us the questions.
It's almost like a question of exposure, isn't it? It's people do understand it. People kind of intuitively understand how to think that way, but we build these mindsets up that block us from doing that. So that exposure to you guys, to Niels, just lock them in a room with Niels, it'll be fine. Is breaking that back down through kind of gentle exposure, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And I think, before we started Craft, we went and had long discussions with a lot of creative agencies. And a lot of them said, you know what, when we get a decent comm strategist in the room, it's fantastic. You can have brilliant conversations. It makes the work better. The reality is you rarely get one. Media agencies are stretched so thinly that the best, you could ask for a comm strategist. And I know when I was running Initiative, the creative agencies within IPG would always be, can I have a comm strategist to help on X, Y, or Z? And I could never free them up because there's barely, I have 2 in the entire business. So the last thing I could do is just chuck one over to them for a week. But you could send them a, social media planner. But of course, they're not senior enough to know that actually they can have a point of view, they can change the direction of the idea, they can push and pull and debate.
And I imagine it very strongly becomes kind of an internal brand thing for you guys at Craft. Like it becomes a cultural norm that you have to establish internally, so that you can build that confidence up in your staff externally.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And you guys, you talk about keeping up with the pace of change as one of the biggest challenges for brands. And I'm interested, so you started in 2017, so it's been 5-6 years now. How much do you feel, or has at all, your kind of goals and your philosophy and how you do things internally changed over those years? What are the big lessons?
It's totally changed, if I'm honest. So we started March 2018, was when we officially started. And if I'm really honest, Sally and I set it up because we had a bit of a middle-aged ladies drop. Like we both left big agencies and sort of in that sort of slamming the door and fine, we'll do it ourselves then. And honestly, the plan was that the 2 of us would somebody would give us a job, right? We'd wander around Soho. That was our new business strategy. Sally used to make me walk up and down Soho streets until we bumped into somebody we knew. And then they'd ask us what we were doing. But it was just going to be the 2 of us. We were just going to maybe sit with a few creative teams, help, earn a living, go home. So we thought it would be quite high strategy, like quite high directional comm strategy that therefore might inform a creative brief. The reality is, as we sort of got in with more clients, as we have grown, as we also identified that media planning's not great either, to be honest. Like, we have stretched down into media planning. And when I say media planning is not great, again, it's become a bit cookie cutter. It's like every plan, take the logo off, it just looks the same, because the objective of putting that plan together is, how do I reach these people as cheaply as possible? So therefore, you get the same media channels delivered at the same weights, at the same cadence. You can't tell whose brand it is. So we have, as we have grown, moved from being quite high strategic sort of consultants into more application of a campaign into paid comms. So we still talk about paid comms, so it's wider than media, that we can have a point of view. Because that understanding of the media science that sits behind putting a media plan together, plus this idea of a brand having a body language, you should be able to know what 2 products should have different plans because they should move through the world differently, even if it's Dove and Nivea and it's moisturizer, that you should be able to feel that these 2 brands differently. They should hang out in different places. They should have different friends that they associate with. So for us, the whole thing about Craft has changed. Like, it was going to be 2 of us. There's now 24 of us. It was going to be high-end strat. It's now all the way down into execution. Very strong point of view on measurement and things like that. So, yeah. And what it will be in 5 years' time, I mean, who knows, to be honest. We just won't buy. We are not interested in buying.
One hard line. I love that term, body language. Just like that simple term alone has like completely opened my mind. on how to think about media as part of. It's just genius. That is all.
I'll give you a good example of body language. We were sitting in the reception area of one of the network agencies. We used to just tip up and steal their coffee and Wi-Fi and hope someone would pass us by and come and talk to us. Anyway, one of the creative teams came downstairs and said, look, we've done this new campaign for the launch of a food mixer. I can't even remember the brand, Brawn or something like that. It was £500 and it was quite a junior creative team, and they got this ad and they put it into Good Housekeeping opposite a recipe for baking or something. And it was fine, fine. And Jen said, you know what? The thing is, all you're doing is telling people that this product exists. And arguably nobody needs a £500 food mixer. So your role for comms is not about awareness. Your role for comms is to create desire, right? You have to make people want this. And at the moment, you're operating at a very rational level. So let's think about if we were to follow the comms model for a car, and we were to shoot the angles of the mixer, and we were to put them on the side of a building as a billboard, and we were to give it a body language that was all about evoking desire, how would that change your creative work? And it was like a light bulb moment for this team, because you could see them going, shit, okay, got it. I've got the difference between a role for comms of simple awareness, which is rational and boring, and a role for comms that is desire and swagger and all of those things that make people notice you. So yeah, body language is a huge part of how we think about comms.
Brilliant. I mean, I immediately do want to see that mixer.
Yeah.
They ended up doing with it. So you one of the things that I think is so fascinating is obviously is you've created this kind of neutral position, but it's also this very central position, I feel, between creative media and brands. Is there something kind of fundamentally you feel like you offer them all, or do you have to have this kind of constantly transformational, giving people different things, or do you feel like they all come to you for a similar kind of skill set or mindset?
I think it's all similar. I think they come to us. So we do really well with quite big clients who've just lost their way, and they've been churning out the same media, broadly the same media plan for years. They no longer know whether they're spending their money in the right way. So they come to us for a bit of an injection of is there something else that we should be thinking about? And then we do really well with clients who really respect strategic thinking, probably have ambitions greater than their budgets, want to know that they need to get it right from the outset. So let's not waste time just spending some money on media in a haphazard way. Let's make strategic decisions. And we talk about the work that we do helping clients say no to good ideas, because they're going to have hundreds of good ideas, right? It's just knowing which is the right idea for now in your current state. So I think they're the two sort of the big client bases for us. Those sort of people want to get it right from the outset, and people who need an injection of creativity and rigor, really.
This sounds slightly silly, but how do you actually do that? How do you find has been really helpful in kind of connecting those teams? Because as we've said, it's become this very structurally separate thing, to the point that you have to break down people's mindsets, but so that they are able to think in different ways. It's very ingrained in kind of all of us and how we work. How do you start kind of structuring those projects? Obviously, you're working with people who recognise they need some of what you've got. Obviously, they've got that intent. But I imagine it can be quite difficult for them to then go through the process that they're not used to. Is there any kind of specific ways that you kind of structure projects and meetings in specific ways to support that? Or is it how you talk about creative and strategy and its input and working together?
Yeah, it was when we did some work on ourselves and our own brand when we first set up, and we worked on our values. And our values are to be the craftiest and to be the nicest. And the reason why they are those two things is exactly what you've said, is that, frankly, you don't need us. You can get by existing normally using all the traditional resources that are out there. So you have to want us, because we're crafty. We will find another way. We give a shit more than other people. We literally understand the craft of putting a plan together. But nicest was a really important value for us to have on top, because that's the emotional gel that enabled us to be in the room. So everybody has to want craft in the room, because you could kill us, right? If we thought, when we launched, there would be a bit more animosity. The opposite has been true. You have to want us in the room. We have to be nice. We have to make the effort to be the gel that joins everything up. We talk about, to be a good comms planner, you never get to pick up the Oscar. Like, being honest, no creative will ever give you the credit for what you've done to help blow that idea. You'll just come back in the next day and it's on the wall, like the inputs and the stimulus, and it's been interpreted. You have to be okay with that. And media buyers will get the credit for delivering a really effective and efficient media plan. Nobody's going to go, I see what you have delivered here. We talk about being a character actor. So you make everybody else look better. You make the creative more famous. You make media more effective and efficient. You give PR a role within the organization. You are there to enhance and join it all up together. But you won't be picking up the Oscar. So yeah, the other value of being the nicest is, like, people have got to want us on the team. We've got to be the guys that you want to pick up the phone to. And as much as we do very well on that, there is still some barriers in place. So the network still can be like, no, you're not invited in, even if we know we can help. It's still some challenges that come from, not in our patch, not in our clients, etc., in a way that the independent sector, whether it's creative agencies or media agencies, frankly, have embraced us and sort of said, yeah, dive on in, this can all help.
And so do you try to get involved early on in the kind of briefing and strategy process, or do you come in when the creative brief is happening, or is it a mix of all of the above when people go, help, and they need you? I'm just interested. I'm trying to imagine you in a room, and I'm just intrigued to know more.
The very best process is to bring us in ahead of the creative brief being written. And the reason for doing that is not to in any way tread on the creative agency toes, but to make sure that they have the best brief possible. So allow us to do what we call our phase one, which is all the grunt work that goes into a strategy. Using all of the data points, what's been happening to this brand over the years, what can we see happen when they advertise, what's been proper audience analysis, looking for the spaces and opportunities within markets where comms can actually help. So where are the gaps that we can point comms into, making sure that all of that work is done rigorously, so that then all the creative agency then needs to do is take that, interpret it, pull it into it's obviously a big deal, but making sure that they're doing it from not just the blurb of information that clients sometimes send out, it's information that's been analysed in a way that is directional for comms. So that's our phase one. And in the ideal process, we would do that ahead of any creative brief being written. And where it works best is when we can then start to debate where the gaps and the opportunities with the planners within agencies, just to make sure that we're all lined up, that it's what we're doing is being useful. So that's phase one. Phase two happens at the same time as creative development. So creatives will be looking at what's their idea. We'll be looking at what's the shape of plan, what's the cadence. Are we looking for a firework? Are we looking for sort of tribal bubbles? What is the... And when you talk to creatives about a shape of a plan, it's more useful actually than talking about channels. So that's phase two, and that's done much more sort of collaboratively, I suppose, with creative development as it goes on. And then phase three is very much in the weeds of planning, so executional detail, formats, weights, channels, etc. And that tends to be the structure of all of our projects.
Sounds so fun.
It's fun. It's fun.
Tell me more. It sounds fantastic. I mean, I think that's kind of the dream from my perspective of how things would work. And so when it comes to creativity and strategy, and then the separation of media from them both often, obviously, that has massively affected you both, because it was, part of your core philosophy as individuals and what you set up Craft to do. But I'm interested in what you think the impact has been on the actual work. If there's any examples you have of times it's gone, incredibly well, probably when you're working with Uncommon and Nils, but just give us some kind of sense of tangibility about what magic that can happen, because I think it can be hard for some people whose brains don't naturally work in more than one way to understand what can come out of that. And so if we can kind of give an example of the magic that does happen, because it is so intangible to a degree, I'd really love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
The Brewdog was one of our first clients, and introduced to us by Uncommon. So Nils had been working with James, the founder at Brewdog, and he'd produced this ad basically on PowerPoint. It had the word advert behind it. Do you remember it? It had the word advert, a can of Punk IPA, I think it was. And he, over the top of that still image, he played a track by Meshuggah, a hard metal track. And it was 30 seconds of this, which is deeply uncomfortable to watch.
It was obnoxious. It was one of the most obnoxious ads we've ever seen.
And he called and said, "Look, I've made this on PowerPoint, and the client's got $100,000 to spend on media. Has never spent on advertising before, and the media agency that he's used has said that it should go on YouTube because of that." So I went over and I watched this 30 seconds of painful video. And I said, you know what? It takes one spot to make you famous. And actually, for that budget, I can probably buy you 5. We can get digital channels. We can get the Game of Thrones finale. We can get the FA Cup final. We can get, we can look for the programs that are talked about the most on Twitter. And because this is a really uncomfortable piece of creative work, it just might happen that it kicks off on Twitter, right? That's the dream. And true enough, James was the fan, was brilliant. I was like, I'm going to buy you 5 spots. That's it. And he said, fine, go for it. Bought the 5 spots. They played out. Every time a spot played out, Twitter kicked off and traffic to the website, to the Brewdog website, increased. So you could see an immediate sort of cause and effect. But that, the point is, you'd usually look at $100,000 budget and go YouTube. It's not the wrong answer, right? It's just, it wasn't the right answer for that really obnoxious creative idea. He also then produced we had a bus side with the same creative treatment, obviously no track. And we knew that everyone would get pissed off in the industry because it wasn't really an ad. That we picked the bus route that went past all the ad agencies.
You were like, we also need to be obnoxious. That was...
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is it though, right? That's Brewdog's body language, is how obnoxious can you possibly be annoy everyone. And, and like I say, it cost about £5.60 in total. But, it was just like one bus just annoying the fuck out of the whole industry.
I am obsessed with this. This is, I think this is about the 5th time I've said genius, but there are no words. Genius. But that's exactly the point, right? It's like, I cannot fundamentally understand how the industry has got, partly obviously because I haven't been in it that long, but how the industry has got to a point where we've separated creative from the context it lives in, because that is everything. Because it literally doubled down on the obnoxiousness and made it so much more powerful as a result.
Yeah, and that's right. It was really obnoxious, but you kind of go, it could have got lost on YouTube.
Yeah.
Or we could have just had a Twitter storm and a campaign, people writing to campaign, people complaining. Let's do that. That's fun.
And so much more on brand for them, as you say. Like, fundamentally, like, I think there is definitely a point in the process where I think the kind of the fundamental brand values of the client brand get kind of lost somewhere along the process, especially when we're talking about those media plans that become that very cookie cutter, it's best practice type situation. And it's like, yes, but is it best practice at this time for this brand with this brand value in this way? And that's such a great example of the magic that happens when you don't think that way. And I will think about that often now. Literally obsessed with it. I'm interested if you think that there's an industry-wide effect. So just kind of laddering up from that specific piece of work. I mean, we've all read, the various papers that have said that creativity in advertising is kind of gradually declining, so on and so forth. Do you agree with that, or do you think that there's any specific kind of industry-wide effects that have happened because of the separation of disciplines, creative strategy, media, any and all of them, really?
So yes and no, I think, is the sort of sitting on the fence argument. Is that I think it's true that creativity has declined within our industry. I think what's also true is the role of advertising and particular media within that has changed its role, potentially, because of its ability to connect directly to e-com and be a sales channel, not just a communications channel. So yes, that's come down, but also this role has appeared as well. It has possibly or definitely taken over prioritization in a lot of instances, but they're two different jobs. One's about making you famous, and the other one is about capturing that fame and driving through to a conversion or an action, as you want to. It is a more sales effect channel. The problem is that everybody's trying to not write the right brief at the beginning, because if you get that right, everything else becomes easy, right? Because if you can write the right brief, we can make work that's designed to make you famous. And then there's probably a secondary brief, which is, how do I capitalize upon that fame with the right channels that have an ability to drive direct sales of my product or my business in some way? When they get lumped together, and when it goes straight into a media team in particular, or into without comm strategy being done, the answer becomes to spend it on the thing that you can measure. And it's easier to measure that. And from a creative point of view, is that you have also not set the ambition for to be creative, to think bigger, to stretch it. It is against that sort of target. So I think if you don't get the brief right, if you don't set what the KPI is correctly, it's like getting everybody in a room and telling them to go left when the opportunity is on the right. If you're all facing immediately in the opposite direction, then that's where you march towards. And that is the world of Comstrat, is that we come in, we line all your pieces up, we tell you you're going right and you're going left, but you're going to do different jobs, and then we'll all meet up together. So it's a little bit yes and no. I sort of understand how it's happened. Don't necessarily agree with it. I think it can all just be sorted out if everybody just has the right job, that they understand what it is that they're answering to.
Maybe we should just talk to each other more, and that might help.
That would be lovely.
Delightful. It'd just be so much fun. It's so interesting that you say setting the ambition, because I think that's so integral from a creative perspective. Because I was thinking while you were talking of the mixer example you gave earlier of that young junior creative team, and that when they got that brief, it was probably like, oh great, we're doing some print stuff for a mixer. Wonderful, that's going to make our careers. But talking to you enabled them to see it in a completely different way. It enabled them to see it as the potential to be a fantastic piece of work. And the change there was not creative necessarily or strategy necessarily in the kind of disciplinary terms, so much as you just opened their mindset about what the goal was. And so I wonder, is there any kind of, you say you have to kind of break people in when you hire, when you're looking for people for your team now, is there any kind of specific mindsets, or is it specific skills that you look for that you're finding you most important, or that you're finding increasingly necessary, considering the absolutely fundamental change of the place in media in our lives?
Jen spends half her life interviewing, so I'm going to let her take this.
I do. Yeah, I see it as part of my job is that I have cups of tea with everybody each week, in and out. So you never know who your next hire is, and I think it's part of our job is that we have a chat and help, give people advice if you've got it, or sort of eye up potential people. I think it's in terms of skill set, my big one is, do you still like this industry? Do you still find it exciting? Do you still think it's the best, has the potential to be the best job in the world? Because the big red flag for me is despondency, and we all love to slag off the industry a little bit, but I want you to slag it off with the intention of making it better, of improving it, of having the ambition as to what it could be. It's the despondency, I think, is a massive red flag, and it's rife in our industry. We've just had 2 CSOs leave big network media agencies. Technically, that should be the best job in town, but it's not. I've done that role, and it isn't, because frankly, you don't get to do the work anymore. As you climb up the ladder, you do less of the thing that you love. You get caught up in more red tape, and it's miserable. But I think once you let that misery inside you, you go and have beehives somewhere, do something else, because the thing that makes this job great is the energy and passion and excitement for everybody. So that would be that's what I look for, is that people who are interested, excited, see the potential, also want to be better than everybody else. I know, that is, when I say we're the nicest, it doesn't mean we're arrogant as well, but we want to do work that makes everybody else jealous. We want to have the ambition about, we don't give a shit about billings. Nobody cares about billings. We don't buy. So who, doesn't, we only exist for the purposes of doing bloody brilliant work that's better than everybody else. Because if that's not what we want to do, what's the point of us? We're just another agency. So ambition, and that is the best thing about craft. Just to talk about the team that we have, they are insanely good, and they're this bunch of wonderful misfits that in any other agency would get lost. But what they've done is they've found each other, and they all think that everybody else is cleverer, smarter, more creative than they are. So there's this really lovely, healthy sense of one-upmanship. They all want to show something or do something or move it on or improve it. And it's brilliant, because they just want to do absolutely phenomenal work. And that is the only thing that matters. So yeah, energy and a desire to win?
We've just hired a senior planner, and he said, look, respect to you two. You have basically hired all of the media geeks in the industry. We invested in a new bit of TGI. We call it Posh TGI. I don't think that's its name. It's Premier TGI or something like that for sort of wealthy people. There were whoops of delight around that's the kind of media geekiness that we get. They're always like little data insights that they send around on the WhatsApp chat, and at school they probably would have their heads flushed down the loo but they found a home with us.
They're all over. I was going to say they're all over Chat GPT at the moment, aren't they? And it is terrifying, but also brilliant how they embrace all of the stuff that's there, and they're excited by what it can do.
There's just a special magic, I feel, when you get a bunch of weirdos together and we just weird together, and it's just beautiful. There's just no other way to describe it. It's so interesting that you talk about the kind of lack of optimism, I guess, in a way, about the industry, because the theme for Media Cat this month is the age of discontent. And I think we're all feeling that for various reasons, but specifically in our industry, do you feel, because obviously you've mentioned kind of, CSOs, it should be the best job in the world. And but it takes you away from the work. What do you think is impacting? I did a lovely podcast episode with Ollie Scott of Unknown, and there's a lot less even kind of juniors, people entering the industry at all, because of this sense of discontent, or young people leaving the industry much earlier than they otherwise would have. I wonder if you have a point of view on what you think is driving that kind of feeling.
I wonder whether part of it is that we are, as an industry, forcing people to specialise too early. So when I joined, I moved around all of the departments, and I kind of got a great overview of what advertising was generally before sort of landing in media, if that makes sense. I feel now that agencies hire, generally, you are going into the digital team, you are going into the telly team, you are going into the outdoor team, and there you will stay. And it sort of just gives everyone a really blinkered point of view of the world. And the net result of that is that they can't step up and out and take an overview because they only know their one thing. And how fucking boring is that? Great if you want to specialise in that, but have a point of view on the rest of the comms mix. Otherwise, what are you doing with your life? I can see why people get bored.
I don't think we help ourselves as well in the, we love to slag off other people. Like, I can't, it is such an unhealthy habit to have such vocal opinions about other people's work and point out all of the faults and errors. And the truth is, it's really hard to have ideas, and it's really hard to give birth to ideas and put them out into the world. We know that everybody is conspiring to kill ideas, like either with budget or ambition or, so when you've done anything and you've got anything out into the world, I think we should celebrate it. Now, it doesn't mean you can't be critical and you can't, but generally we love to pile in. And as an industry, I think that pointy finger, piling in, collective malaise about what does good look like is bringing us all down. And instead, and therefore we don't look like a bunch of nice people that people want to hang out with. So from the outside, if I go onto industry Twitter, you don't look like the kind of people I want to have a beer with or sit next to for Christmas dinner. Like, we've got so talking to ourselves that actually I think we should be talking to a wider audience than just the collective industry. And we should be more positive about anything that anybody is doing that is trying to be creative, find another audience, use a new channel, it's hard to sell washing up liquid, so
It's really fucking hard to get anything actually out in the world.
yeah.
Like when a brilliantly creative or just incredibly smart piece of work comes out, I like to do a little happy dance for the people who got it out, because I know how many times we've all put brilliant ideas in there and they get cut at the first round or the second round or the third round. It's so hard to get something to even mediocre to actually happen. But I totally get it. Like, I get why we get ground down by kind of the process, and as you say, kind of almost each other. Like, we do know a lot, don't we?
Yeah, we just need to play a bit more, just muck about, and it'd be all right to have some fun and riff on things and to try stuff out without the fear that you're going to get it wrong or everybody's going to call you an idiot.
Yeah, definitely. Like, everything has become kind of so structured and timesheeted and so on and so forth, and it's hard to just find that time to just sit down and have a really stupid conversation about ChatGPT or something you saw on TikTok, and then but brilliant stuff comes out of that. So I love that you guys are just out there trying to make everyone a bit nicer. Appreciate that. So to leave us on a hopeful note, not discontent, in line with our thinking, what do you think that we kind of, as individuals, but also, as employers, as part of the industry, what do you think we can do to make it a happier place to work in the future? Play, massive number one.
Massive number one. Focus on. I think that's the main one. I think as well, just sort of focusing on the work rather than the shit that goes around it. Just making sure that we are celebrating work, as we were just saying, and also just being happy to chew the fat. And if you spend a day just talking about stuff, brilliant. We try and have 3 or 4 away days a year, like proper, like out of the office, chew the fat. And then every week there's a couple of kind of check-in sessions where you can just open-ended sort of meeting times. But just make I suppose the other thing is feedback. We should talk about feedback, shouldn't we? We are a culture of feedbackers. We give everyone feedback. It's always about the work. It's never about the individual. We work collaboratively. We work in Google Docs basically, and everyone just contributes and adds ideas in, and you're never offended by the fact that someone has just changed the heading on your slide because they've made it better. And I feel like feedback is too often consigned to a sort of once a year in your review. I would say we're feeding back pretty much every day. Every day is a school day, right? We can let's make it better. Let's hone it. Is that argument exactly right? Have you looked at this weird bit of data? Let's just build it together. And I think that helps people feel stimulated. It helps them feel like they're learning, that they're growing, that they've got direction, that people are recognizing what they're doing.
So yeah,
feedback. Be my number.
Feedback is you've got to understand the curve of feedback, because you have to understand how to give it and also understand how people receive it. So when you give feedback, and I'm notorious for this, I was told I was brutal. I'm not. I'm like, it is all about the work and it's positive. But you have to understand that when you give somebody feedback, the first thing that they will think is, fuck you. Like, that is the instinctive response. Is then the second thing they'll think is, oh my God, I'm terrible. I'm awful. I'm never going to do any work at all. I'm a disaster. And that's not helpful. The third point is, okay, now what? And you have to be able to give feedback, and you have to give it so often that the movement through stage 1 and stage 2, because they still happen, is now so quick that you're straight into stage 3, which is about positive. So yeah, if you can build a culture of more feedback that understands that process and gets through it really quickly, you're just only ever talking about making it better.
That's such a great way of putting it, because it is one of the things that I think creatives especially get a really bad rap for, that we don't take feedback very well. And it's like, yes, we don't, but it's also a very human thing to do. And it's kind of our job to just be like putting our soul on the table all the time. So yeah, occasionally it does hurt a little bit, and I'm sorry about that. But I love that idea that you can essentially just be desensitized over time. Just keep doing it until it becomes normal, and then we can all just get on with our lives and make things better.
I was never a big on feedback until I met Jen. And then after every meeting that we'd first have, she'd say, do you have any feedback for me? And originally, I was just like, what the hell is this? This is crazy. I'd literally have to make up feedback to give to her, otherwise she wouldn't shut up. I'm now really into it. I'm now like, I'm a big advocate for giving, we will give each other feedback after this, probably.
Oh, please do send me some as well. I very much welcome your feedback after this call has ended. I will not be sharing that with the podcast listeners, just so. I would genuinely like it. I think that's such a great, it's because it's, when you first say it, it feels almost negative. But when you think about it, it's a very positive, optimistic act, because you're saying, we can all do better together. Let's just move that process on a little bit and go to the fun bit instead of the bit where we question our life choices.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, both of you, Sally and Jen. This has been such a lovely chat. And I'm now just going to obsess over multiple things that you've said, and obviously wait patiently for my feedback. Thank you so much, both of you. Is there anything before we finish that you want to tell the listeners that you've got coming up, or anything that you are looking forward to?
I was going to say, this is the self-promo. This is what we're terrible at. No, we will take briefs. We would love more people to get in touch for a bit of crafty magic. So just the door is open.
Go get crafty, guys. It sounds like so much fun. Like, sort your lives out. Thank you so much, Sally and Jen, for coming on the Media Cat Magazine podcast. It has been an absolute joy to speak to you today.